Welcome to the start of another Business and Markets Week. It's the final 5 trading days of the month of August. Then we're technically done with the second month in the third quarter. But let's just hit the ground running. Quite a whole lot to talk about this Monday news coming out of Libya in North Africa, that the eastern faction of the government in the country says a force majeure has been declared on all the country's oil production and exports, and that means from Sharara oil field across all the entire country, roughly 2 million barrels per day, will be shut down because there's a row or a dispute over the control of the central bank and who should be appointed as the governor of the Central Bank of Libya. That is the problem. This morning, oil prices, London Brent at $81 a barrel. Now, if you take the whole weekend issue between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah into consideration, you can see geopolitics beginning to rear its ugly head. Over the weekend, Israel attacked several positions of Hezbollah. According to Israel, this was a preemptive strike. Israel says due to intelligence, Hezbollah militants are ready to fire hundreds of rockets into northern Israel, and they took a preemptive strike at about 5 a.m. local time to strike those Hezbollah positions, those range of missiles being destroyed. That's according to Israel. Then you've got news out of Libya in North Africa saying there's a force majeure on oil production and exports in the North African country because there's a spot over the control of the central bank. Remember last week there was a report from a United Nations envoy to Libya, which was presented to the President and Council of the United Nations, talking about the very delicate situation in terms of security, politics, central bank, exports out of Libya. The country is divided, deeply divided, polarized among the warring generals and political candidates, those who are trying to vie for the office of the president. Election is still being discussed. All of this taking Monday to start as we go to the final days of August. Welcome, everyone, to your Frontier Opening Bell. How did we finish off on Friday? The Nigerian market was up 0.27% week on week. However, the market was finished off in the red. The BRVM finished Friday 0.25%, taking the composite in Cote d'Ivoire higher for the regional West African French-speaking exchange market into 252.9 region. The Egyptian stock market was closed on Friday. Thursday was the end of the week. The market gained 0.6%. Thursday, we will see how the market moved on from today. Nairobi stock market was down 0.2%. Friday, the Johannesburg market was up 0.87%. The rand was also better, very strongly on the dollar, as we heard from Jackson Hole, Jerome Powell, the U.S. Fed chairman, saying that the time has come for the FOMC, the U.S. Fed, to start to lower interest rates. That's where we're starting off today. So let's move on and see what's making headlines across the continent and across the various regions. Let's check in with East Africa. September 2nd, now just a few days from now, the Kenya Central Bank is looking to stop the paying of commissions to banks, to custodians, stockbrokers, and others for bond trades. The central bank says it's going to save some billions of shillings in that. If you're trading government bonds, government is not going to pay you commission. And that's the way it's going to go from Monday, September the 2nd. Ethiopia Prime Minister Abiy has commissioned the First Lady's bread and flour factory in the region, in the Horn of Africa's economy. Tanzania, in the meantime, in Eastern Africa, is adopting Chinese technology for its soya milk production, while 9 Tanzanian companies will be getting about $24.2 million as grants from the United States using the private sector window to support these companies within the President Samia Suluhu's economy. And those are the headlines to start the week. There's a whole lot more to deal with as we move on in the final week. But let's get on to West Africa. Of course, that big statement, the time has come. That was the biggest phrase on Friday from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where the central bank governors in developed economies were meeting in the United States. That's according to Jerome Powell. The markets took that to the streets on Friday. We'll see how the rest of the start of the week, the morning after, technically speaking, will look like. Now, total Africa private equity and venture capital inflows was less than $1 billion in the first 6 months of this year, We've seen some of these inflows into various regions in Africa, with East and Central Africa leading the share of these inflows. But broadly speaking, we've seen a decline because there are concerns about the state of the economy, the whole geopolitics, the unrest, and all of that in a number of African economies. Kenya, for example, we've seen it in Nigeria and a few other jurisdictions as well. They have big economies such as South Africa struggling with quite a number of infrastructure issues to deal with. So inflows, as far as private equities and venture capital is concerned, try to decelerate in the first half of the year. But let's see what the rest of the year looks like. Meristem, however, saw second quarter GDP growth for Nigeria 3.42% against 2.8% in the first quarter. Well, the news is out. The Statistics Office reported today that Nigeria's GDP growth 1% in the second quarter in the June. That was bigger, slightly bigger than 2.8% reported in the first quarter, January to March. The report also showed that the agri sector contribution to the economy growth was also flagging in just about 1%. How does the country deal with agriculture? 200 million plus people undergoing very huge inflation, food inflation, inflation level, as well as prices rocketing, the government importing food to distribute to 200 million people. That's not sustainable. It's on the table. It's a very short-term measure that will end in December, as well as taking some customs duties and VAT of some of these food items being imported, some domestic food items, but that's still all in everyone's conversation. But you've got the Nigeria's breaking news. GDP for the second quarter came in at 3.1% reading. Now let's move on. Nigerian authorities asking all cryptocurrencies exchanges in the country to stop operating if they are not licensed by the SEC. And that's from the Office of the Special Advisor to the President on ICT Development and Innovation. Finally, in West Africa, Ghana is looking to start Eurobond exchange this week to wrap up its debt restructuring with international bondholders. What else do we know right now? Let's move on to Southern Africa. Of course, the rand was firmer Friday. The stock market was also in the green on the back of the statement from Jackson Hole, Jerome Powell, saying the time has come for the U.S. to start lowering interest rate. In the meantime, Goldfields is cutting its target again for the year on the back of Chile and South Africa's copper output. Zambia is rejecting the 156% power price hike, the tariff on electricity that has been raised because the country is going through a very serious drought on the back of El Nino. Some of the biggest hydropower plants in the Southern African economy is going at very low water levels, so output is very, very low, and that is the latest. So the 165% tariff hike being proposed on electricity tariffs by the agency is now being rejected. Finally, Botswana has cut interest rate. The central bank news came in Friday. 1.9% is what we saw on the table. This is the second time. The first rate cut was in June. Let's see what the final meeting by the Botswana Central Bank, let's see what that looks like in the next couple of months to wrap up the year. In the meantime, VFEX, that's the Victoria Fall Exchange, which is a dollar-based exchange in Zimbabwe, is looking to start trading in commodities. It was initially scheduled for first quarter. That's now been moved to the final quarter, starting on the 1st of October. We've got 30 days or thereabout to see how that happens. But let's move on and talk back on North Africa. And Libya right now is in the news with the force majeure being declared on oil production and oil exports, about 2 million barrels. That's pushing oil prices strongly up as we start Monday, the 26th of August. In the meantime, Egyptian Prime Minister has announced the launch of the country's first voluntary carbon market. Meantime, Uganda is targeting Egypt and the UAE for its beef exports. That's according to the Egyptian, to the minister in charge of that. Somalia's cabinet has also approved 2 new financial regulations and cutting access fee to the country's port. That's in the Horn of Africa. And finally, back in the region, North Africa, Morocco has introduced 20 dirham currency notes with the features for visually impaired citizens. That will help anyone who's visually impaired to touch the currency and know what it really feels like and what it exchanged for. And that's all about now for our Frontier opening bell. It's the opening sequence for the current week. We thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I am Bosin Amofai, and I'll see you soon through the rest of the week.